Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
testing my headset and
Yep.
5 minutes has
Okay.
gone into this call. Is Kaushik around?
Kaushik mentioned that he's not going to make it today.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know because I was
That's right.
discussing some things with him and I felt as if he's joining and I was kind of waiting for him to join. All right then, if Kaushik is not coming, I just need to ask one more question to the community before we get into the R2 requirements document. We have currently two meetings. One is on Monday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, and one is on Thursday. So do you guys feel that we should continue with two meetings until R2 is finalized? Anyone? Answers? Feedback?
Yeah, I think one is enough for a SIG one, in my opinion.
Yeah, generally it's only one meeting, but we actually made two SIG architecture meetings just to finish the requirements convergence on R2, and we have done some good work there. I will circle back with Kaushik and see if we can actually reduce back to one meeting a week. He already asked question in the SIG architecture group, but nobody answered. So I was trying to make sure that we have some feedback from everyone here in this meeting. So I've heard from Sandeep that one meeting is good. If we are in good shape for R2 requirements and we have achieved some convergence there, I'll circle back with Kaushik and make it back to one meeting a week. I'm trying to look at the document, and we have made a lot of progress since the beginning, but still we need to do some more convergence around how do we finalize our requirements for R2 and in a form that is actually achievable for the second release. And anyone can brief me on the last meeting where we left this off, because I didn't circle back with Kaushik. No one? Think we'll just start with the up until now what we have summarized for the key deliverables for release 2. We have finalized so far that we are picking the second network function vendor as a free 5GC, and the overall theme of the release 2 that now is appearing to be converging is that deployment of a new network function and extending the existing CRDs for cluster network fabric and LCM automation. Some POCs happening on the site, and we are now at a stage where we need to finalize the user journeys to ensure that we have 3 well-defined user journeys from these themes that we can use for finalizing the R2 requirements. And one thing that I'm still not clear about, and I have tried to discover, is that the free 5GC is considered as an additional flavor of the ORAN network function. And the documents and the videos I tried to capture up until now, I have a feeling that the OIC has a simulator for the RAN components, and it has a simulated version of the VCUs and VDUs. Has anyone in this group an experience working with their templates, and anybody who has attempted to work with their CRDs so far? I'm just trying to make sure that that selection of the second vendor has happened from the SIG automation or someone who has actually made that decision based on what's available there.
Yeah, this is Joseph here. I think we in the previous meeting also, I think we discussed this, and we had started looking into OAI RAN, and it's not simulated. It's actual. Maybe Sagar can also comment. It's actual software, the VCU, VDU. The simulated part is only the RF layer. So the rest of the components are real, and I think it can be connected to any RF, and it should also work. So I think we have started in the last meeting. We discussed the user stories for this item, and I think broadly everybody had commented and we discussed, and we think that we can do it in R2.
Okay, excellent. So within this project, do we have the VCUs and VDUs? Because these are the virtualized components that we get from commercial vendors.
Yeah, so VCU is so the split version is VCU, CUCP, CUUP, and VU. So these are the components which we can use.
Can you come again? It's the split components of
CUCP, the control plane, CU
a user
control
plane. Okay,
CUCP and CUUP, and then VDU.
and then you have a VDU. And this component is essentially the VCU, which you are telling me is again split
Yes.
into control plane and user plane.
Correct,
And these
yeah.
network functions are considered as one NF or two NF. It's just the open source project that I'm trying to understand, because commercially these are two network functions.
Correct. So it is deployed separately with different Helm charts.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll have to we have to discuss. We are still discussing if it has to be like one CRD or for each of these. Do we need separate CRDs? Do we need separate controllers for each of these components, or can we do it with one controller? So those are discussions that we are having right now.
Okay, excellent. And one more question. When I was looking at this open air interface project, I found as if it comes with its own integrated 5G core. So what is the discussion so far in that group? Are we considering the use of their own 5G core, or are we going to basically stitch that with the R1 deliverables, whatever we did for the pre-5GC?
I think that integrating with pre-5GC was a stretch goal, is what we discussed in the previous meeting. For OAI core, I think Sagar has already done a lot of work, and he's shown the demo in one of the SIG automation meetings of how we can deploy OAI core with Nephew. So, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Sana, it's with me. I raised my hand. So one thing is that I think for the radio, I think I'm not sure that I'm wrong. We have two. I think OAI supports two flavors. One is more the integrated radio, and one is the split radio, right? A question there also for us: do we have to deploy the VCU and the VDU for the split thing in separate clusters, or do you not care?
What is easiest, Wim, in this case? Do we have, if we deploy it on separate clusters, would that be more challenging?
See, we need more resources, basically. So that's the problem, the challenge. The challenge is going to be the test bed and the resources needed to support that. And I think right now, I think we run on a 16-core vCPU. We probably need to scale that up. So that's the reason why I'm asking. And we probably need to scale it up no matter what, because of the additional components. So Sagar raised his hand, so probably he has an answer to this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so by the way, 16 cores should be enough. I mean, it's not big of a deal. And if you want to start with, we can just put everything in one cluster, because they're going to be three different components, three different pods containing, each pod will contain one container. So that will be, CUUP, CUCP, and DU. So they will be three.
Right. And what is, I think, so normally I always try to, of course, depending on, let's say, the resources that we need to deploy it in a in a real-time way. So that's why I was or in a real life way. Sorry, that's why I think typically so the VCU and the control plane are deployed together, whereas the VDU is more remote, right? Is that not the more realistic, the more real?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more realistic, then it would be also that you can remove you can put the control plane near to the control plane network functions, let's say, or an associated edge. And then you can have a far edge where you can put the user plane also. So
because a more realistic scenario is that we put the UPF and then the VCUs together, right? And then the VDU remote.
Yes, the CU-UP part, the UP part, not. So I want to I want to divide the VCU into two parts, the control plane and user plane, to remove the confusion. So the user plane should be next to the user plane function, UPF. So that's how it depends. If you want to get some low latency, so this is the low latency setting, let's say.
That's what we do today. I mean, today we have edge clusters, so I would suppose that we put the VCU's data plane on the same edge cluster.
Exactly. Exactly. That's how it should be. And the control plane, we can say that we can put it in the regional cluster because we don't have the concept of, let's say, associated edge and far edge, you know. So we can do like that, and the DU should be in a separate cluster, you know.
We put like a remote edge, something like that. That is associated to the edge. So we have to add one cluster for the radio, for the DU.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we can do that. I mean, yeah, we can do like this. I mean, we can also have, let's say, DU close to the CU, UP, and UPF. I think so. If it's going to be really
we will have to see. We'll have to discuss. But at least if we can, it should be separated. If we cannot, we put it on the same one.
Sure. I mean, it depends on what kind of a scenario, like this high throughput, low latency, whatever. But I don't think it's gonna be big of a deal to switch it from one cluster to another. And in terms of resources, 16 CPU should be enough, for one instance, one single DU. Because CU, UP, and the UPF and the CU part does not really consume a lot of CPUs. It does not really consume much. Actually, it's only the DU which is heavy in terms. Yeah.
So I would suggest maybe we can go in reverse. Start with user journeys that are already well known in OAI and well tested and supported, and do those in FEO, right? Instead of us dictating the user journey. There's probably a lot of documentation and work in OAI already on that, right?
So are we going to consume those artifacts as well? Some of the templates and some of the work that's done in the project? Because I know that they did work on some of the Nephew project related automations as well.
Yeah, Sagar here is the one who did it, I think.
I know. I caught up with that. Okay, the best would be that I stop sharing my stream, and if someone can guide me to the user journeys that I have seen what you're saying, Tol. Maybe I can look at that, and then we can fetch some of the user journeys and bring them here in this document.
Before you guys move on, I have my hand raised and I have a quick question.
Sorry. Go ahead, please, Anne.
Yeah, thanks. Sega, you mentioned the far edge and the near edge. Do you see a need for something like that in future releases of Nephew?
Okay, so that's really that is really a subjective kind of question, because this concept of far edge, far edge, associated edge, and all those things, it really depends on the deployment of the operator and in which area the operator deploys. Let's say if a city has a lot of people, let's say, I don't know, Shanghai, so the operator will have this kind of a setting. Let's say if the operator deploys in a smaller area, it should be different. So on this, I cannot really comment. It should be more some bigger operator who deploys in real environment, because we don't really deploy in a real environment. So probably somebody, Nokia or Ericsson, who does deployment, or Orange, who uses the deployment. So they would be knowing more than me.
Okay, yeah, I'm more interested in the concept themselves as an applicable required infrastructure that Nephew has to run on or support. And
I'll comment on that. I mean, I think that
Okay.
ultimately the goal is that Nephew supports the use cases that the different telcos have. And so we don't necessarily deep in the code put that kind of opinionated, like we have right now, we have regional cluster and edge cluster. They're just two different clusters. It's how you make use of them and how we connect up with the networking. So we want to be sure that, like, I think the question here is it important to exercise a third or fourth type of cluster?
Exactly.
And put workloads in different places to make sure the machinery supports all of the complexity that entails. And I think that maybe, I don't know if we'll learn new things from that or not, but I think it's useful potentially to do it for demonstration purposes as well, to show that we can do it. So either we learn something new, or we have to change something, or we learn that we already have sufficient primitives to do it. So I think it's useful in that sense.
Yeah, that was my question. So
Yeah,
the
I'll
point
add
is,
to that. Sure, go ahead.
the point is, I'm not deep enough to make this definitive statement, but I've read enough, and there are companies out there that are doing the far edge and near edge without using Kubernetes, and they're getting a lot of traction in the market for a certain market. And I'm just wondering if that's applicable to telco, to the operator environments, especially if you start thinking of software-defined vehicle, right? They totally rely on that. So I'm just trying to look ahead, 3-4 releases out. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, on to this is definitely, I think, in scope, right? The whole idea of multi-cloud for Nephew. I would be careful with the terminology of near edge and far edge, because different telcos have different layouts, and there might be even 3 different kinds of levels, if they're very big. The point being that, some sets of sites could be from entirely different vendor, right? You can have far edge sites that are Kubernetes running on one vendor, and a near edge that would be possibly even not Kubernetes, right? OpenStack and something else. So the whole multi-cloud layout, I think, is part of the environment where we want to be. But even if it's 100% Kubernetes, it could be Kubernetes from different cloud providers, right? As long as we can support that, I don't think there's any limit to what Nephi would be able to do. So I would say that's absolutely in scope, the ability to be multi-cloud.
Yeah, I'm thinking, from the current deployment that I've seen, postage share on different venue, the far edge is where the non-Kubernetes is playing, and the near edge is where the Kubernetes terminate, because the far edges could be IoT and things like that, and those things do not necessarily have the resource to support, kubelet and things like that. So that's where I was going with this. It's not to get deeper in the definition right at this moment, but the possibility of anticipating and preparing, including support provision for a future expansion like that. And I guess the answer is yes, but we're not sure yet which direction or how far ahead. I don't want to sidetrack the discussion, just a quick question. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks, An and Tol. I'll go back to the previous discussion where we left this off. So I'm trying to find the document where we discussed the OpenA interface user journeys, and I have seen some of the work that was presented in other SIGs. Can anybody fetch that document so we can review that? Because I do understand that there are some that they have already talked about. Maybe we can actually use that for converging on our own user stories.
Yeah, I just put the link on the chat.
Okay. Okay, Joseph, perfect.
What we discussed last time.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I will get some of these and trying to converge the work that we have been trying to do in the other R2 document. Is that the document?
Yeah, I think slide 4 is,
So this is giving us some background.
yeah, the
And
background,
everybody in this community has reviewed the slides, and you guys are up to speed with that?
We discussed about it in the last meeting on Thursday.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
no further comments after that. I think we still under discussion.
Yeah, let's, and this is posted in SIG architecture as well, right? Because that's how I would have seen it.
Yeah, we put it in the channel. Yeah, Vikas channel.
And in this particular plan, you guys are showing as the free 5GC, building a connection to free 5GC could be a stretch goal, which is the existing artifacts created from R1, right?
Right.
So whatever user journeys are proposed in Site 4 are actually focusing on the open interface project and their own internal deliverables only up until this point.
Right. Yeah. Right.
No, I'm
Well,
just trying to
you know,
basically ask this question to
Mm.
the broader community as well. Like, what is our thought process around that? Does it seem to be a stretch goal for connecting with the existing free 5GC, the work that we have already done in this particular release?
I think
Yes.
the fact is we don't the fact is we don't know. So therefore we say it's a stretch goal because it's not
Okay.
it's not like something that really matters for automations. The interoperability between free 5GC, 5G core, and the OAI RAN is not something the Nephew community are thriving to put as a goal. So if they work, great. Which I think Eric commented last week or last Thursday too, that there's some work being done to make sure that they can interoperate. So if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll term it as something that we don't know yet.
Right. So we'll deploy a whole OAI core and RAN, and we also, if it's possible, if the projects themselves interoperate, we'd like to demonstrate, free 5GC core with an OAI RAN, but we can't really say whether that is possible or not right now. And it's not critical to, like, we'll show the full, the RAN and core working together with OAI. But yeah, so
Quick question. I haven't looked at the OAI RAN very deep at all. I mean, I read the first blurb about it, the high level blurb. Do you see the OAI RAN input as something similar to what we have done, or is it a new type of input to the package controllers?
Yeah, I think we touched upon that on Thursday a little bit. So they encourage what we encouraged folks that are working on this 5GC, this 5G RAN will do is the NF deployment piece is extremely generic. So if you have an IP interface, you should be using it. The NF deployment, CLD. So if they take that, they should potentially be able to leverage the specialization logics and things like that. So we encourage the sub team that are working on this to consider using that CLD. If they do, then they can leverage a lot of things that we already have. There will be additional things that are probably RAN specific that they have to add, both in defining the CLDs and adding to the package. So they should do that. But then for now, we do encourage them to include NF deployment structure as part of this.
Essentially, we have a set of CRDs, some for RAN, some for core, as input.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really exercise them at core. I mean, in theory, we could like add a UPF specific things on UPF deployment in addition to NF deployment, but we didn't. But then the same concept would apply. So if RAN has very RAN specific configurations, which is common across all RAN deployments, which is very hard to determine, I know. But if there is one, and then the community rich consensus that these things are common, then that we should include them on like a, you know, VCU deployment or VDU deployment or GNOP deployment or something. So yeah.
And
Also,
one more question, sorry, really quickly. How do the CRD, the RAN CRD, fit into something like a topology controller? I'm going toward the network slice direction.
No, so for topology, it's nothing more than this is a VCU, and then the inclusion of those CLs in the package is what matters. So yeah, it doesn't affect the topology as much. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as there's the CR or CRD representing them in the package, then it's okay.
Yeah, the topology is
you know,
extremely simplistic. Yeah, the topology manager is very simple. Yeah, the intelligence in the package.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, Antu, I was going to answer your question, your first question, right? So I think in bullet number A, right, that is Sana, I think is updating, right? So 3 or 2A, is that what we did not do, right? So we have the framework of the interfaces and stuff like that, right? And the NF deployment. So we want to reuse as much as we can, potentially do some extensions there. But the other thing that we really want to cover is to allow for vendor-specific or area-specific CR input inside of the package, which we really didn't do in part 1. And that allows, we believe that would allow us to do, for example, if OAI has specific parameters and FreeFive-GC has specific parameters, that's the way that we can convey that without us having to understand all of that. You see?
I see. I that's where I was struggling to verbalize. So thank you. But that
so that's the mechanism. That's the mechanism that we propose to do so, and so that will be at the workload level be represented in the config. What is it? Config reference, right? That we will add, and then the operator at the lowest level will take that into account when rendering the, let's say, the specifics at the last step. So that's the mechanism that we are proposing to use for specific, and that can be vendor specific or domain specific parameters.
Yes, and that brought up a question somebody asked me over LinkedIn or something, and which is the input to the packages. If I'm a vendor or an operator and I want to use Nepio, I have to build that package as input, right? And the question is, how do they do that? Do we intend to work on that as in a future release to support that kind of effort?
I think at the moment, or at least my perspective is that we don't have that in scope for R2, but I always said that this is something we will have to work on eventually. But
I think the part of the Nepio SDK includes not
just the Nepio SDK has
packages.
An item
it's like
on
that's
that.
why it's not the Nepio operator SDK. It's the Nepio SDK. It's like, how do you integrate? How do you onboard a vendor? So package management, package construction, and whatever we have to do for that should be part of it. But I don't think we've figured out exactly how we're going to do that yet.
Right. Yeah, and package condition is package construction is definitely a big piece out of that.
Okay, so I guess I'll wait till tonight when we discuss the operator SDK to double click. But thank you.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Yeah, functionally talking, but then how to do it obviously is a slightly longer discussion.
Yeah, because I have over the weekend I post something about LLM and telco on a separate thread in LinkedIn, and some people privately message me and say, how does Nepio ingest their existing topology or future network slices topology? And I'm like, as far as I know, as a CR, CRD, and package, but I wasn't sure of the answer. Sorry.
Okay, all good. Tol, based on your feedback, I took the user journeys from the document and I got this here, and I'm trying to absorb that. What I'm looking at is that on a very high level, the initial user stories that are actually presented in the section A to I are mostly around deploying the OIA NFs and performing some initial, the 0-day 1 configurations.
Yeah, I think this is a list of the tasks maybe we have to do. It doesn't look like from a user perspective.
Right. It's not a high-level user journey. So basically what I tried to get out of all the discussion that we had, and where I was trying to converge the R to user journeys, to me, on a very high level, it seems like what seems realistic at this stage is that we instantiate and configure the OIA video VCU, the second network function, through Nephew-based construct, which is described in detail here. The next important part that I felt was to be able to demonstrate a UE-based end-to-end call. I know this is looking very ambitious, but then I created an OR in between. Whatever seems realistic at that stage, either the OIA 5GC, which would be relatively simpler, or if it is possible, we could connect with the free 5GC that we have already worked on in R1 and then show an end-to-end call. And maybe this looks simple, but this would have some involved work in terms of achieving some configurations. Which I was trying to look at is that these interfaces are required to configure between the RAN components and the 5G components. And when it's in the actual world, of course, it's not running in co-located clusters. In the actual world, there is some transport network involved in between, and all the VLANs and all the SD-WAN automation comes to play a role. But what would be the most relevant or realistic simulation for us to achieve these N2, N3 kind of configurations between the two domains in the world that we are in? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure, we can do a call. We've already had a call in R1. I think we have just a whole bunch of different ideas. I'm trying to brainstorm. So Bernard, you know, and a few others talked about having a service assurance example, right? Even a very, very limited one.
Right.
I wonder if we can just pick one story, because, you know, time is running short. Pick one basic story and have all the POCs kind of go around it. And I wonder if service assurance can be the one, right? Because that can involve a policy framework POC, that can involve more work on infra, right? I wonder if instead of like having a whole bunch of user journeys, we can just have one user journey because we're trying to pick a user journey that will showcase and allow us to do technical improvements, right? And more features. So do we need many user journeys or just one very good one?
One good theme, you're right. One good theme and everything can be incrementally improved around it. It seems to be a very good idea. And you know, one of the biggest incentive for Nephew when we were trying to basically explain it to the people in a layman's terms, one useful thing that stood out and which actually helped me and Kandan explain that very well to the people who are new to the concept was the very powerful closed loop that exists in this whole concept. So if we build on it, to your point, all, it's going to be very useful, a very useful exercise in R2. But I'm also brainstorming with you. Do you say that we should do the service assurance based closed loop across infrastructure, across network functions? Should we focus on doing that on the existing free 5GC that is already there, because there is no fresh work on working on new Helm charts and turning them into CRDs and deploying them and instantiating them, because that part of work is done. You can incrementally build on it and then focus on the service assurance aspects of what's being there. Or are we agreeing as a community that we must introduce ORAN and then consider doing some service assurance closed loop on that? And I'm still brainstorming because I'm trying to finalize three high level. Go ahead.
Little bits of all of that, right? Because we started with this idea of north, south, east, west integration, and we know we're not going to have deep integrations.
Not everything.
They're going to be very superficial at first. But yes, if we can find a user journey that will really connect those, then we can show a little bit of each, right? A little bit of ORAN, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just brainstorming.
From marketing hype perspective.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the hands. From the marketing hype perspective, and from every organization's interest perspective, I do believe that dipping our feet a little bit into the ORAN context is extremely important at this stage, because it looks very relevant to what the world is worrying about and what everybody's trying to solve within their organizations. So to me, that idea looks very attractive. To be doing something with the VDU-VCU, at least.
Because it's Wim. I also
Please
raise my
go
hand.
ahead.
Is the user story for R2 not that we incorporate the radio? Basically,
radio is a simulator. It's a simulator, what I'm discovering.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, for us, it doesn't matter because whether it's a real thing or a simulator, it doesn't really matter. Radio, sorry, I mean ORAN as a whole, whether the radio is simulated or not, in my view, doesn't really matter. But I think the new theme for R2 is going to be that it's no longer only the core, it's the end-to-end 5G, including the radio, including the RAN, basically. Because bear in mind, right, we have 3 weeks if the dates holds.
So when you are using simulators...
3 sprints, sorry. 3 sprints, which is 6 weeks.
Yes. 6 week sprints, right? So the 3 things that stood out in my mind are here. Using ORAN, deploying the network functions and using RAN simulators, like you said, whatever that means, whatever minimal can come out of it. Our ability to connect that RAN, the newly deployed RAN, with any 5G core, which could be the existing 5G core or the one that actually comes a part of the project, like whichever one is simpler, and maybe having some basic config that allows us to...
Yeah, what you do with that, Sana, also is that we say, okay, it was free 5GC, but now it's OAI and free 5GC, right? So you also basically say that we have onboarded multiple implementations, right?
Right.
So I know Subhash has his hands raised. Subhash, please go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead. I can't see the raised hands because I'm sharing my screen. I'm so sorry. Please speak up when you find your turn.
So actually, I have started one sketch around the service assurance. So that part already discussing with Bernard and Tal, and I'm trying to collect some ideas, some inputs, and trying to sketching the whole concept. So actually, I'm doing in the context of policy, so that I can hook the policy in the service assurance use case. So that I'm trying to realize it. So possibly maybe I'll able to complete the document in few days, and I will able to discuss further on it. So just wanted to notify.
That's excellent,
Yeah,
Subhash.
yeah.
Subhash, go ahead. I was just adding a comment that since we have some convergence on the use cases to high level, if you can present your ideas around closed loop and assurance in the context of what we are trying to discuss, I think that would be an excellent brainstorming session on your proposal.
Okay, sure.
And Tal, you were saying something.
Yeah, I have an idea.
Okay,
and Wim's point is very pertinent, right? That we have very little time to actually develop something for R2. I want to suggest that because we set up a wide net in SIG1 here for R2, let's talk about this in terms of R2/R3 planning. And R2 will be a milestone, right? So the idea is that, yes, the release of R2 will have probably experimental versions of a lot of these things. Maybe some won't even make it into the actual release, right? They'll be in POC state. But it seems to me that we have this big tension here between, on the one hand, very little time, and on the other hand, a lot of things that we want to do. I don't want to limit our planning. I think this planning is good. I keep saying, we get paralyzed by the 6 month cadence, and we shouldn't. So my suggestion, revolutionary suggestion, I don't know how people would think about this, that this whole document would be Nefio release 2/3. And then maybe we'll be able to breathe a little bit. SIG2 will then be able to answer what they can actually put in terms of an R2 milestone. But the design and planning, I don't think should be limited few weeks time that we have to work.
Yes, I
Does that
agree
make
with you,
sense?
Tol. Yes, that does. Because if I limit my thinking to 6-week sprints, all the creative ideas that are coming on building the use case are actually restricted. And I don't want that to happen. And because I didn't want that to happen, today we are at a stage where we are not able to converge for the R2 scope. So I think it's a difficult problem to navigate while working with a big community like that. And I think the excellent way is to share all what we want to do, at least in a realistic form, and then allow SIG automation to come back to us and say that this is R2, that this is R3, and this is beyond. Maybe that would be a good exercise. And luckily, we have you and John from SIG automation already here. So I think your contribution can actually streamline some of that.
Yeah. Yes, and it's Wimir, I raised my hand. So, but I agree that this is the way to do it, right? And we should do. I will have the same discussion. For me, the same discussion will be in R3 with R4, right? So, in my view, your document should be always about what do we basically hard. So, what do we make sure that we definitely deliver in R2, and which pieces do we start working on to prepare for the R3, right? And then in R3 we'll have the same discussion with R4 and so on and so forth. So I think this is the way to do it all the time, because from the moment right now we had too much, let's say, lag between the R1 deliverable and say the start of R2, if you will. So we should try to shorten that going forward. And so by preparing, like Tal said already, okay, setting the thoughts for R3 and putting them in place is going to help us, in my view, to achieve that.
I completely agree with you.
I'm agreeing with what you were saying.
Okay, yeah, we are all agreeing there. So we had 3 high-level stories which I tried to summarize further, and I felt as if to make the 6-week sprint target very realistic, maybe we only instantiate the open interface radio components and explore their initial day 0, day 1 configurations, like we did for the free 5GC, like we just focus on one domain. Maybe that's the focus of R2. Maybe the connection of this domain with the 5GC and doing an end-to-end call could become the potential stretch goal, which can actually go to R3. And all the service assurance things could be both in R1 and R2. I'm again brainstorming based on what looks more realistic in that 6-week sprint time frame.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to summarize just my understanding, and also the scope of R2 seems to be, like showcasing the principles of R1 that we did. In the R1, we showcased the principles of Nephew, and then R2 is how we can extend the principles to onboard another vendor. So that is OAI core. That's one major story. The second story is obviously showcase and extend the principles to onboard ORAN workloads, and then integrate the OAI ORAN with the OAI core to make end-to-end call. According to me, in terms of, I think those two are the two main scope and stories. When I say stories, not the Scrum level stories, but overall the story of
very high level. That's right.
Yeah, very high level story for the release for R2. That is the actual material deliverable. Anything beyond that would be a stretch. So, for example, integrating OAI with FreeGC or even a scale out, scale in scenarios. So those may be a stretch. I think those could, I mean, we could plan for that, but I really think beyond these two main messages, we cannot deliver anything else. And obviously we have planned for the free POCs as well. I think obviously they will go in parallel with these things, and then they will probably we can scope them and then figure out how to bring them for R3, because at this point of time we don't even have a process defined. For example, if something goes into a POC, repo, then what is the process to bring it onto our main repo, things like that. We have not defined those things yet. That's why I'm saying probably beyond these two main things that I said, probably anything else could be a little bit of stretch to materially deliver in R2. But I'm not suggesting anything, not to do any work or anything, but I'm just suggesting, like things will go in parallel, but they will not be realized in a release stream itself.
Right. So I have a suggestion. The SIG architecture has done some work over the last few weeks to come up with ideas, come up with the use cases, and trying to basically articulate how would that make a realistic sense for our R2 to accomplish that. And we have a lot of feedback coming on and off from SIG automation on everything, because John and Tal are always on our calls and they're always participating. But what would really make concrete feedback to all this exercise is to come back with your effort index, John and Tal. Share with us in terms of your timing that whatever 3 high-level themes are on the screen for the R2, to which degree and in which order does this seem realistic to you? And of course, we can all agree as a community and we can form the R2 scope and close it, because it's something that we are not able to close for quite some time. Although we increased our number of sessions and meetings twice a week, but we are still not fully converged on those ideas. I'm thinking maybe that will help us at least seal the scope, and you guys can actually get on and start focusing on your deliverables.
I have my hands up.
And has her hands raised. Please go ahead, Ant.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I can't see the hands raised. I'm going to off my screen so that I can see that.
Yeah, no worries. The only thing I want to point out is it's not 6 sprint of 2 weeks left, right? We have 4 weeks in October, 4 weeks in September, so that's 8. And then realistically 1 or 2 weeks in November before Thanksgiving hit in the US and things slow down.
We're actually targeting November 15th. So yeah, so we have even less time than that.
Yeah.
We can ask for an extension too from the TSC.
Well, I thought the point was to avoid extension.
Yeah, right. Like we had that discussion in Wednesday's meeting. Like, my opinion is we should just have a cadence and deliver what we have. But I'm not, we really, I think we decided to leave that up to the TSC, but I don't know that we ever actually raised it. Like, do we want a fixed cadence or do we want to do it more organically? And so, I'll do whatever TSC wants to do. My
suggestion, John. So I think I want to do what you are saying. that is the healthy way to proceed. I don't think we're there quite yet as a community, right? I think our design process here in R1 obviously has issues. So I think maybe for R2, we're still quite not there. So we're still having maybe more traditional waterfall like R2. Hopefully beyond that, we can move to, I think, a steady cadence, which is more agile. I hate to use that word, but yeah, a cadence that is more reliable. But maybe I don't know if we're there yet.
I think release was
and then sorry, if you let me, that wasn't quite my point. I want to take it further. We have 10 weeks, right? So take 2 weeks for integration and testing, right? So that gives us 8.
So Alan, I think
4 weeks actually.
Until we take 4 weeks basically, because we saw that with R1 we basically it was way too short that we planned.
Okay. So that essentially give us 2 or 3 sprints. Depends on if we go with 2 weeks or 4 week sprints, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and just to elaborate on what Wim said, it's about the Yes.
I hate being cut off because being one of the few women's in tech it's very offensive to me. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is there are 2 or 3 sprints left. Given the tech devs, given the operator SDK, given some of the other efforts being proposed, I don't see it feasible in 2 or 3 sprints. And I mean, it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm pretty much 100% free because I'm not working for a company right now, and I can devote a lot of time. But the other people in the group do not have that luxury, right? So we're talking not even full-time developer contribution. So we need to scale this way back is what I'm trying to say. And no offense, if we stick to the deadline of November 15, I think SIG2 needs to come back with very concrete top 2 or 3 efforts that scope to 2 or 3 sprints. And if that's the accepted baseline assumption, then none of these use cases or user story we're talking about are doable in that. And even if we do what Tal said, which is POC, right? We're going to deliver an R2 that's, in my vocabulary, rather fluffy. So we need 1 or 2 features that gets done completely end to end, right? Whatever that means. And then a bunch of POC. And those POC has to be understood that, why, and no offense to anybody here, why there are a lot of discussion, contribution at the discussion level, at the coding level, there's not that many contributors devoting time to it. So keep that in mind when you start discussing and committing. I'm being hyper realistic and trying not to be offensive to anyone. Thanks.
No, and I think those are all really good points. And we did discuss it a little bit on Thursday, and we wanted to do exactly what you just said and try and lay out what we think we can deliver. If you go look, I don't think it's being displayed right now, but the actual set of what we wanted to deliver in R2, the reason we think like the OAI pieces can be done is because Sagar's actually already done most of it. Otherwise, it would be questionable. So like your points are very well taken, and I appreciate it because we need to make sure in this discussion there's realistic expectation set about what can be delivered in mid-November. And thank you for that.
Exactly. Yeah. I just don't want to think that SIG2 is going to deliver all this, and then in November we don't have it, and then the recommendation and all that. I want to be realistic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think
the other point is the other point
Oh.
is there are a lot of interests external to Nephew. Just on LinkedIn, I get private messages on like, where are we going? What are we doing? How come we're not doing this, that, the other thing? And I'm trying to bring some of those discussion in here by inviting those people, but they're not scheduling or whatever. So, I wanted us to present a clean, cohesive progress to the external potential adopter. That's where I'm coming from.
That's very helpful. On people who are commenting to you on the LinkedIn should actually contribute and come directly and join the community with us, because that is going to be very, very constructive for them to basically receive their feedback and incorporate any ideas that they may have. So please encourage them to join the community, because that's an open source project. We have only a couple of minutes left. I have one hand raised, and I also have one comment for the Thursday's meeting that I felt would be a very good direction based on all the discussions that we had today. I'll let Bala speak, and then I'm going to make my final comment. Go ahead, Bala.
Thanks, Sana. So the point I was trying to say was, and to the final 2 sprints, like it's for not only integration testing, it's a hardening sprint, bug fixing sprints, and also getting our documentation tidy sprints. So that's where our final 2 sprints will be dedicated for. And then that's why when I told Sana that other than these 2 main stories I was talking about extending the principles of Nephew by incorporating OAI, and then obviously incorporating OAI RAN as well. Other than those 2 things and fixing other bugs, we cannot do anything else.
I completely agree with you, Bala. That's exactly what I put in the document. The document is not shared anymore, but the next 2 things that I felt could become a part of R2, I actually put the stretch goal in front of it, which means that they could very well fell into R3. And sequel to your comment, I feel that this Thursday meeting, I want to invite the SIG automation chairs, John and Wim, and the supporting group, Tall and everybody else. Bala, you guys are all working in SIG automation. I want you to come back to us and share with us a realistic, achievable R2 scope. And everything else we'd all holistically agree as a community, we'll fix the documentation, everything else could become R2 beyond. And then SIG architecture will continue to work on the R2 beyond and streamlining that, because with all the exercise and a lot of brainstorming and ideas, I have a feeling that this effort has not gone wasted. We have potentially a much better direction for R3 and beyond right now. So we can start to focus on that. And at least the scope for R2 would be finalized, and you would have something, some target to deliver on, which you guys can continue working on then.
Cool. So Wim and John, do you think we can do that on Thursday, or do you think we could we should do it on obviously next Monday is a holiday here. Probably we should do it on Thursday. Okay.
Yeah, I think we should probably try and do it on Thursday. So what that means is that we need to, in our Wednesday meeting, really need to nail that down, or we need to do it, maybe do some prep work ahead of time in Slack.
Yeah, well reviewing the L2 requirement is already part of the agenda for 2 meetings on Wednesday.
Is that what I remember we put? Okay.
Yeah, we put that in as like at least a 45-minute slot.
Yeah. Plus, we need to review all the CRDs that Sagar used and stuff like that. So I think we have to really get our act together, because if radio is the big, or the run is the big thing, we need to get all of this reviewed and ensure that we are doing all the updates in the relevant places and stuff like that.
So is it realistic to, I mean, have that discussion on Thursday, or at least a rough?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to somehow this week, I think, because I think now the content of R2, what we are expecting is rather, I mean, it's pretty clear, right? At least for me.
Yeah.
Now we have to, I think, have the people around to see in R2 whether we can do it or not, right? So that I think that's the process.
So Wim, do we need to have that kind of a thorough review of CRDs for define the scope, or just to define the scope? We could probably we could do it after. Is it not the case?
See, I'm pretty sure we need to do something for the config CRD. It's probably not a lot of work, but there's something to be done in specialization, as far as I can see, right? It's not major.
Yeah, that's probably part of scoping, but it's probably not needed.
So that's what we have to do is scoping, and such that we can build the or the different items and tasks and stuff like that, and who is doing what, and start to flush it out in detail, right? So we have like the high level view. I think the good thing is that Sagar did already a lot of work. So we now have to bring it to all the different, we have to smash it up and see who does what and which pieces and stuff like that, right? So that's what in my view, I mean, if run is the big thing, or is one of the big things, and then the vendor specific extension, then we have to flush this out ASAP.
Okay, I'm sorry, I need to drop off, but I know Sagar has a hand, but I at least need to go, but you guys can continue.
Okay, all good, John. I think we will be wrapping up soon as well. I expect some discussion on Thursday, even if it is not the final discussion, at least what you guys feel so far on our Thursday session. I think that will help us converge the R2 scope as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And Wim, if by any chance you guys feel that you're not ready for Thursday and you need more time, we can also defer that discussion to Monday, next SIG meeting.
Yeah, for sure. I will try to get it. So it's maybe I'm not sure. Yeah, so maybe Sagar.
Next Monday is a US holiday. I think that's why Bala was saying that it's probably better to do it on Thursday.
Let's try to focus it on Thursday then. Whatever you can come up. It's not written in stone, but I think your high level perception around that would also be very helpful. And meanwhile, I'll circle back with Kaushik on what we have discussed. I think we're all converging on same ideas right now.
So awesome. Before we part, when do we actually have these SIG architecture meetings? Monday and Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday?
Monday and Thursday. And Bala, we are also thinking to reduce that to only Mondays. Once we have an R2 scope finalized and agreed, we'll go back to our previous cadence of just having the meeting on Mondays.
And what about Tuesdays? Are they meeting on Tuesdays?
Okay, Tuesday is the work group for actually the Helm and the SDK meeting, which is internal meeting, not the SIG architecture's main meeting. It's a work group meeting. Those
Okay.
can continue because I'm not hosting them.
Okay, cool. So same time, Mondays and Thursdays. Got it. Okay,
Right,
thank you.
right. All right,
All right.
then. We
Thank
can part and then we can see each other on Thursday.
The Sagar
Thank you,
had his hand raised. I'm just wondering whether he
Oops,
wants
I'm
to say
sorry.
something.
Sagar is still here?
It's perfectly fine. It's over. I just gonna write a message on the SIG automation, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, Sagar, we'll see you all on Thursday. Let's get some
Okay.
feedback from SIG automation.
Yeah,
Thank you,
sure.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you, guys.
Have a good
well,
day.
Wim or Bala, you probably want to stop recording.
Okay,
Ah,
you can
okay.
stop.
Yeah.
I will do.